he didn't like the way it was worded, but I'm going to read it anyway in here. It says, "It's no coincidence that 3 of his players held the record for the fastest serve in the Pro Tour at one point in their career." So help me welcome Bill Belser.
Really, the way I worded that was that I was very lucky to have 3 players with that kind of ammunition in their arm and shoulder to be able to serve. But this is not the serve topic today, this is the volley. And let me start out by saying that there's many different ways to hit a volley. As I was evident, I spent many years on the Peterborough International. They're, from my opinion, one of the best teachers of the volley in the game. And I learned at a young age, Peter was my coach, that the best way to volley was the thing catch. And he had this racket designed with the net in it, and he taught me, because when I was young, I used to like everything really hard. And he said, "No, you need this." And just ran around feeling like I was catching butterflies on a court where the ball would come to me. And he would have me just work on just catching. And with an object in my hand was a net, that's what you had to do to get rid of the swing. So that was my introduction to how to volley properly. So I took this with me in all my travels and ended up teaching it pretty basically. And it worked very well with beginners and it worked very well with high-end players. But I had the good fortune, I was living in Spain and worked with Arantxa Sanchez, and I love to tell this story where with Arantxa, I got her when she was 15, she was already 50 in the world. And she was having a lot of trouble with her volley. She loved doubles, but she'd run around the baseline like her brother Emilio. Emilio and Sergio Casal, #1 in the world in doubles. They had won all the majors, and they were one of the first teams that brought back into play playing from the baseline. So here's Arantxa, and her mentality is when it comes to volley, you swing, you take a big swing, and you really knife through the court. And yet she was having trouble returning some of the shots at that time. Steffi Graf was playing well, and she just couldn't volley well against him. So I really worked on her with the catching concept. Well, we're in Barcelona, a tennis club training one day, and Emilio was watching us, and I'm teaching her how to catch, and he said, "What are you doing? She'll never put the ball away like that." And I said, "Sure she will, she'll have more accuracy." And he said, "No, she's got a lot more power on it." So we got into this discussion. Arantxa goes, wins her first doubles tournament. About a month later, comes back, we're training, and Emilio had lost the match against Ivan Lindell, and Lindell didn't care about doubles. He usually played the first round just to get used to the courts and the conditions. And so this discussion is taking place over lunch, and Emilio, I said to him, how many times have you net? He said, "Are you kidding? Getting the net against Lindell's forehand, the ball's go over. I can't control the ball." Arantxa started laughing and said, "Well, if you learn to catch, you can do it." So I love telling that story, and when Emilio and I speak together, I tell the story, always gives me the finger, and you know. But so it's important to understand that there's lots of different volleys. Another time in my career, I was out in Marietta Springs, and one of the PBI pros brought in the Indian group, and Andrew Pace was one of them. And I'm working with the kids, I'm serving and volleying, and different shots. And Andrew comes out there, this kid is, if any of you seen him play, the quickest hands in the game. You ask the Belser brothers who's the quickest around the net, it's always Andrew. Well, he was literally taking a ball and drag coming out and hitting volleys back like this with a full swing, not like Sanders could do. So I started thinking, you know, there's so many different ways to volley. And then you saw Agassi out there hitting topspin volleys, you saw Serena. So my point today with the modern volley is to understand that you want to have what I call a universal volley. And it all starts from the catching concept. If a ball comes to you and you catch like this, that's not what we're talking about. A ball that comes to you, catch pulling back, that's not what we're talking about. Okay, that's a good way to catch. You absorb the power. What I'm talking about is a ball where you assertively catch, really look at the ball coming in, and pay attention. What are my fingers doing? They're relaxing, and they squeeze. Again, they're relaxed, looking for the ball, and then they squeeze. So you take a kid, or beginning, it doesn't matter, beginning man, beginning late, it doesn't matter, teach them how to catch. Most people catch better with their left hand if they played any baseball or softball. So you can teach them with the right hand how to line the ball up and squeeze. Once they start getting that concept, there's a vast amount of drills you can do with the catching racket or choking up in your racket up here and doing different concepts. So this is one of the basic ones we see is when you have the player choke up. And just, sorry, your racket in front of you, just out here in front. I don't like to do this with a high-level player. Because as you saw last night, I'm glad most of you were at the match last night. The modern game has gone to such extremes as far as how hard and how much action players are putting on the ball that you can't just come to net, hit a ball deep, and that's what I have the targets in the back for. Those are the old day volleys. We used to teach everybody just volleys to open court deep and you'll be fine. Or approach deep down there, and nowadays you pray the guy's going to miss it. He's not going to miss it at a high level. So I'm going to be going back and forth from beginner to advanced and invested. And some of you are interested in your junior academies and coaching top juniors, and some of you say, what the heck, all I work with is 10-year-olds and you know, beginning players. So we're going to go back and forth a little bit, and I'll leave plenty of time for questions and answers later. But let's get back on track here. So secondly, most important is the continental grip. There's many variations. You know, you've got some of the Aussies that have a continental grip with their hands way up on top. You've got a player like Steffi Graf who uses the Eastern forehand grip for her volley, but what they both have in common, whether it's Pat Cash or Pat Rafter, Steffi Graf, McEnroe, Federer, and I'll talk a little more about them in a few minutes, is that they're always have the wrist and outside the ball position. And this is critical for really high levels, but also if you stay over here for a minute. This is Dave Newhart, by the way. He's given the next presentation. Him and I worked together for about 10 years at PBI many years ago. If a ball's coming cross court, it doesn't matter what level you are. If it's coming cross court and you have your racket in a flat presentation, which is why I try to stay away from blocking your volleys or punching your volleys, because if it's coming cross court, the angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. So if I keep my racket straight, I want to go down the line to that orange target deep, and it comes cross court, I keep my racket straight, it's going to, It's going to angle incidence equals angle reflection. Angle incidence equals angle reflection. It's going to go out that way. So your wrist has to be on the outside the ball angle. And you say, well, then it's going to go across court. No, because the angle's coming in this way. And we add an assertive bite to the ball, which is pressing forward. So that same ball not be outside the ball, stepping in, it goes down the line. So with the continental grip, or the hammer grip, it's a lot easier to get outside the ball on both sides. And I'm going to talk more about that as we go on about it at a high level, why you need to do that. Backspin. This, you know, you get in trouble when you say everybody should have backspin, because Pete Sampras, right? This McEnroe sometimes. You know, the idea of being able to control a ball and really bite it aggressively, you want to have your own spin. To counter spin, you have to apply your own spin. If you don't, if I could hold my racket perfectly still and straight and you hit a ball with a ton of top spin, where would that ball go? It would hit my strings. Go up. It's going to jump up, right? The top spin comes like this. It's really hard to demonstrate, but I'll try. You know, heavy top spin. If I can hold it flat, it wants to bounce off my racket. You might say I'm cheating here because I'm holding my racket. But that's, and then I can't demonstrate it. The spin bites the ball. The top spin bites into the strings and wants to climb up the racket. But you can do the demonstration yourself. Just take top spin, let it hit your racket, and feel where that ball wants to go when it hits your strings. It wants to go up. Then you have a ball that's heavy backspin, which last night Steve Johnson was hitting with heavy chip, and it was incredible that Taylor could block those balls well. Near the end of the match, he did not one of those. But backspin, when it hits your racket, it wants to climb and go down. So it's really hard to hit a volley that's hit with heavy backspin. Somebody chips a ball in low to make it go, and then you're down here to make it go over the net. You really got to open the racket and put your own spin on it. So you counter spin with your own spin. I'll talk more about that as we go on about the high levels, why you need to have good backspin in your volley. But backspin gives you a feel, gives you some control on the ball as opposed to just blocking it around. If you just block the ball around, you're going to be more like a Jimmy Connor style volley on his forehand volley. He has the highest percentage of winning at the net in the game. I believe Craig O'Shaughnessy will be speaking soon. He talks a lot about the percentages won at net, percentages at the baseline. But Connor's had a very flat volley, but when did he hit the volley? When did he hit the volley?
Every April.
What?
Every April.
Every April. Or after he hit the most incredible approach shot you ever saw, and all he was getting was jump back. So he'd run in and he'd pound it off and pound it off. Not taken away from Connor, he's a great player. Okay, so footwork. The old school, we've all taught this, I still teach this sometimes. The emergency was to go ahead and take, if the ball's going to take a big crossover step, get over there and it's like that. And what happens when you take a crossover step? Where does your weight go as you're going? It goes to the side, and does it go up or down? When you do a lunge, where does your weight go? Down, right? When you go to do a wide crossover step, you go to go down as you hit the ball. So if you're going down at a high speed, your ball's going to go down, right? Unless you're good with your hands. So if you have time, you want to run. Why hit a ball like this? And you can do this. You go ahead and get over there. Who volleys like I just did? Federer? McEnroe, they all do it. The only time you see the big crossover step is that's the only career they have. If that first ball you hit, I'm not ready for it. I'm going to pull the muscle down and do wide stuff. If this was fast, I have no choice to get out there like that. I have no choice. It's so fast and coming by, you got to do a crossover. So that's more of an emergency shot. You want to keep your legs underneath you, right? The more reaching you are, the more apt you are to go down. The bigger step you take, the more you're going to go down. And at the net, you have to be really light and quick. You have to be able to move, respond, change directions. All right, so here's the one that I always get in trouble with. So please bear with me before I start asking questions. To win at the net, I'm a big proponent that tennis goes in cycles. And I firmly believe we're going to have another generation of players that come up and are winning at the net. Why? Is it easier to win the point from here or back there if I'm here and I have a ball on my strings? Here, right? Get it there, hit the ball off the frame, maybe, and we're going to do the same. There, get it with the butt. I can't do that right there. From up here, the angles and possibility of winning are so much greater. And then you always say, yeah, but. Everybody has to spin, everybody has to power, and they can't react. Those athletes have gotten bigger and stronger. The future generation coming up is going to get bigger and stronger. The idea of a universal winning volley is what we saw last night with Taylor. Do you all remember when he came to the net where he hit his volleys? When he came to the net?
Sure.
Yeah? So blue stands for sky, right? Universe. If you hit your volleys in those two spots, who's going to get that? The dog's not going to get that. That's how she set it up. And again, earlier I said, I haven't spoken about it yet. Every ball has to have some spin and some bite. We're not talking about the macro volley as a whole. And believe me, macro hits those volleys as well as anybody. We're not talking about this kind of volley. The dog is that. We're talking about an angle volley with a little bit of bite on it, starting to step. Like I saw last night with Taylor, just a little bit of bite on it. Nobody's going to get that. And my respect for Taylor off the charts last night when he came in, there was no messing around. His volleys were like that. He did not try to go deep. You had Steve come in. He's been trained a little more old school. He was volleys in the open court. What was happening? He was having to respond to some overheads and passing shots. Granted, Steve came in probably 2 or 3 times more than Taylor, and that goes on to a very interesting story I have about universal volleys. What's important is what you do before the volleys. So Jimmy Connor's not done. He came in after fantastic shots and you couldn't pass him. Well, when I was training Greg Brzezinski, we used to practice with Pete Sampras a lot. And one day in practice, Sampras was making that move from being, remember he used to be a two-hander when he was young, and he went to one hand with his dream of winning Wimbledon. And one day in practice, the conversation went a little bit like this, I don't know exactly, but the goalie was his coach back then, the one that passed away, and they were talking, and Greg had whipped a left-handed passing shot short angle, and Pete was like, why do I want to come in there? Why? I just want to come in and pass. And Belser said, well, you're forgetting the formula. You're forgetting what I've taught you. When you work hard, you only come in when you take away one of Greg's options. So you have the best overhead in the world. One of the best overheads in the world at that time. You have put away volleys, so if you can take away the cross-court option, you're going to win the point. So I thought about that, so how do you do that? Now you look at how Pete came to net. Pete's forehand volley was not something I would teach. In fact, when we practiced and played with him, that's how Brzezinski beat him in San Jose was we kept the ball, every kid would keep the ball low to his forehand side. Yeah, he's an incredible talent, one of the best players of all time. He can do this ball all day long. If you get it low and firm enough, and he could, his half volley, in my opinion, was better than his low forehand volley because of the way he shoveled it over. It didn't have backspin, just kind of a shove it over type shot. Then you had a good chance of winning against him. And so I've also been trying to thought there. So to be able to have a universal volley is you take away one of the options. So you don't come in with a simple approach shot and then say, okay, he can go down the line, he can go short or he can lob. I'm stuck. I'm only going to win. If I guess, I'm only going to win out of 3 of those. Now I'm hitting so deep and so friggin' hard, or so low, or so firm, or so wide. Take away his time that he can't go straight and go across court. I mean, now I like this. I got a forehand volley right here. Chances of me winning the point go off the charts. He hits a lob. I got to bring it overhead. Cross over and get back. So that was it. That was for me the secret. And now if you ask me about that today, that was a big changing point in our life as player and coach because he was a great serve. He wanted to play like Agassi. He had extreme grips. He wanted to return like Agassi. And we were always in disagreement because he couldn't return like that. But he had great hands around the net. He liked being at the net. After that day, we changed our training completely. It just became 1-2 tennis. Serve, really good serve, get out, and hit to do up in court. Approach shot, really get our backswing. Really knife your backhand so low and firm and wide that you don't have to worry about the cross-court passing shot. The days he won, that's how I was playing. The days he lost, he would get tight, he would miss, or he would put it more in the middle, and he would get past. The first time he played Michael Chang was 4 in the world. We were just starting this, and he got beat, but it was close enough that he said to me after, he said, I think I can beat him. And there was another coach involved at the time that said, maybe you don't go wide on Chang because his able passing shots are so great. So the first match, Greg was kind of confused, and he did some, he did some after he said to both of us, he said, you know what, I can beat him. I'll just be a little more selective when I come in. But his passing shot training wasn't that great when I really hit the ball deep and firm and got enough juice on the ball. Next time you beat him. 3 months later, played him again, and that was our game plan. To make sure when you come in, Michael's way off the court, but you're way back, and you can step in at all, you're in trouble because he can pass down one. So that helps you. If your approach shot is such so you can tell your players, okay, Bill, that's easy enough for a real world-class player. What do I do with my 3.5 players? Hey, 3.5 versus 3.5. Just wait. Wait until you have the shot, and you can make the person move diagonally back. The key is, you want it, the formula is you try to make the move diagonally back. And I thought that's what Taylor did so well last night. He only came in when he had Steve. They'd get his long rally. Steve would do a few of these knives, and you see how selective Taylor was. Steve would be knifing the ball low, and Taylor would be right in this area. And you say, why doesn't he go to the net? He has such great volleys. Well, he has that mentality. I'm going to go in if I can be sure to limit his possibilities of passing shots. So he'd back up again. Going. Then when he had a chance to really drive through the court, the ball set up a little more, he could drive through and get Steve moved diagonally backwards. That's what he did. He came in, he had a little universal in the volley. And I was like, wow, he hasn't once come in and just placed the ball deep and then hope that Steve would miss. And then you saw the balls he came in over, Steve did one hit with weird shots like that. That's Steve being confused, not having time, because Taylor took away his time. He was going to approach down the middle, he hit so freaking hard. So that's the idea with a high level, or like a 3.5, you wait, you move the ball until you can come in and take away the options. So let's see, swing volleys, is there a place? Definitely. With a swing volley, you're making a statement. And I do a lot of the swing volleys, especially with my girls. This winter we had Ty Kwiatkowski, who's, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 in the nation right now in CAAs. He's plays number 2 at UVA. The only reason he doesn't play 1 is because the guy who plays number 1 beat him, or won in CAAs last year. So Ty has more ranking points. And then Taylor Davison from Stanford, and one girl from Stanford this year. We're talking about volleys, and she has good hands, but she kept trying to do conventional volleys from back here, and she would get maybe passed. And my point was, why? You're playing those good in trouble, you're good ground strokes, the ball comes up and in, you're hitting a conventional volley, and they come running in. And you know, if you talked to me 10 years ago, I'd be like, absolutely right, that's the right thing to do. Not anymore because what he has said, she doesn't really hit that conventional volley thrown off the court, she's going to get past. So we worked a lot on the swinging volleys, and with swinging volley, you don't necessarily want the accuracy. With this volley, this volley, we're thinking accuracy. This ball, we're thinking, okay, I want it on the blue. This one, I want it sharp angle. Now that ball over there, I just hit the second target, the yellowish one, I forgot to mention, that's what we worked on with Rosetsky. For me back then, that was universal volley. Now the guys are so much faster, trying to have it work anymore. So we're working more on the short angles. And then there was the first one's universal winning volley now. The second one is used to be, and that's still a good shot if you're up here. Coming in on a high ball. Dave will talk later about offensive, neutral defense, DNO theory and double. So if the ball's up here, then you have to go for a little deeper targets and we grab the ball and knife it to the more angle, the deeper angle. And then but on a swing volley, we're making a statement. It's not, you can't be that accurate. On a swing volley, I'm going to go to the biggest open spot on the court with full power, full swing, grab the ball, lift. The only difference between a swing volley and a normal ground stroke is that you're biting the ball more. So the ball's dropping, it wants to go down. You've got to sink your strings into it, really grab it, lift it, and go for a big target area because you're swinging so hard. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so then you have the mentality. This is probably the biggest question of all. You can't take a player like Arancha Sanchez or even Nadal's mentality and make him into a serve volley. That's not their mentality. Because to be up here, at least the way we've often taught, is risky business. And you have to accept you're going to get passed, you're going to get beat sometime. Well, you know, a big eye opener. I hope you all get to listen to Craig O'Shaughnessy's talk later. I actually maneuvered things that I could bring with him tonight because I want to pick his brain some more on this. But when I heard him speak, I said, wow, he's absolutely right. If I had known this 10 years ago, 15 years ago on the tour, my players would have had a lot more success. Because we all deal, whether it's a trio, player, kid, or a champion, a top junior player, we all deal with the perfectionists. I've never met, ever in my career, a successful tennis player that isn't stubborn, that isn't strong-willed, that doesn't have some perfectionist behavior about him, isn't used to getting things his or her way. Those are all characteristics that make it hard to lose. So you combine that, you say, well, then how am I going to make this player be a net rusher? Because they're going to lose sometimes. right? You're going to get past. Guys going to let go of you, whatever. It's just back there. You have more time, and you know you can maneuver. You can get more balls back, all that kind of stuff. Well, the eye-opening thing that I heard from Craig in New Orleans was that when Nadal was on that winning stretch, you know, where I don't want to take away Craig's thunder, but who here that has not heard Craig speak? Craig O'Shaughnessy speak. Okay? And from those, and the others can answer, do you all know what percentage of points are won on the Pro Tour? We're talking even Nadal when he went through that stretch where he was, what was he, like 52-0 on clay? What percentage of points he's actually winning?
55.
What?
55.
55? Had you heard the talk before? Well, then that's cheating. The answer. So yeah, so you think about 55, 52, 55%, you think, wow, that means almost 5 out of 10 points I'm losing. He's talking about the baseline. So from back here, you're going to lose 5, let's say 5 out of 11 points you're going to lose. That's a tough thing to take for somebody that's used to having their way. I didn't know that back then. I had no idea, you know, because you often see, you know, you see the stats where it'll show that, you know, it's like 114 points to 112 points at the end of matches, but it never occurred to me that that's quite often. You see that Federer or Djokovic beat Federer, and the final score was 116 points, 114. That's less than 55%, right? And you're thinking, but it didn't sink in that that's pretty common. Whether it's first round 6-3, 6-3, it's still going to be within. It's less than 60%. So. Okay, so that's how I'm getting this talk. I said, okay, I need to really work with my players. I understand that they're going to be losing a lot of points. Just make sure that train them, build the momentum. Like, well, if you ever lose 2 points in a row, you stop, you go back. Okay, so what does that have to do with volleys? Well, if you really don't fall asleep, later in Craig's talk, he talks about the net. And the percentage of points won at the net. Does anybody know? And don't answer if you've heard him talk before. Is it more or less percentage of points when you come into net?
More.
More? It's more. So you're like, well, why don't they come to net? Well, the reason they don't come to net is because they don't have the universal approach shot, universal volleys. And you say, well, that's tough to do. Well, how tough is it? You saw Taylor do it last night against a player that beats up on him all the time in practice. You know, yes, Steve got a little tight, and yeah, Taylor had the match of his life, but still, when Taylor came in, there was no messing around. Correct me if I'm wrong, at least saw him lose 1 point at the net. I think he got in. I haven't seen the stats yet, but I think he got in probably close to 8-9 times. Does anybody else remember losing any other points at the net? Just out, Steve chipped that one back into the end, and he brought down for it and caught the net. And it was the only one, I think, that. So it is possible. So it's making me change my training. You know, Craig's talk about you go around the tour and you don't see points that last 27 points. Last night there were a lot of long rallies. It makes me think the surface, in fact, it does feel pretty slow. It's pretty slow. But they were both trying first strike tennis. There was a lot of 1-2 combinations. I mean, how many balls were in the backspin? How many balls you guys saw like this? Right? How much do we coach that in training? You know, we all teach backspin, of course, but the outline emergency sets. Those are then taking away the other person's first strike tennis. So for the net rushers, then, since the percentages are higher, I believe it was 62%. Is that what it was for coming in? I believe it's 62%. I like those odds better than 52%. So I'm going to keep encouraging my players, not just to come to Net Valley. We're going to work on first strike tennis, really good first serves, really good return of second serve. If the person's in trouble, sneak in. Really good first ball. So how does that apply to 3.5? It's the same, because you're playing against the same player. You're just trying to make your 3.5 serve a little more bite of it. Your approach shot maybe a little more chopped so that the person's really running and just trying to get the ball. But I'm talking about the mentality now, not the technique, the mentality of being a serving volley or just coming in. Okay, so this is the last thing here. So Ty is a very good player, Ty Kwiatkowski. He's was #1 junior in the U.S. for several years. Now he's at UVA. He's had some bad luck with a really bad wrist injury, but he's probably going to play the Pro Tour. He likes to come forward, and he was having a really tough time with his high volleys, off heavy balls, not floating balls, but guys with heavy toss to with lots of action. And the ball was flying, and he just couldn't get the feeling of biting. I'm a believer that at a basic level up to a certain level till you're ready to hit swing volleys, that you should be biting the high ball too. It should have backspin. It shouldn't be a flat ball because of the top spin. So it looks a little bit like this. It's an easy high ball. So it looks a little bit like this, where you're grabbing the ball down and putting backspin outside the ball in it. So again, so you're here, you're grabbing the ball down, and so he still wasn't getting it. And so I told him a story when we were kids, that we had an apple orchard in our backyard, and we used to have apple fights, apple wars. And we would pick an apple out of the tree, and in one motion we pick the apple and we fire. And all the kids in my academy laugh at this story now because I tell them, you need to go pick some apples. Because the feeling is, if you think apple, when you eat an apple, your teeth don't slide off. You bite it, that biting. So right now, this ball comes, I'm biting the ball. I'm actually biting. If you hear that, that doesn't sound like this. This will be a flapping. And this will be the one I'm biting. You can hear me bite the ball. It has a little bit of backspin. So the idea of, when you're picking an apple, you don't go like this, right? You would turn it a little bit, you turn it, you pull down. That's the correct way of at least for us that we're winning these apple wars, that's our technique. But the idea is you're pulling down, putting your hand a little bit on the outside of the ball and grabbing it. That's really a good feeling for what it is like. The feeling for people that don't understand what I mean by bite on a low volley or the other volley or on a topspin is when you bite into an apple, that sound, you're not just brushing, you're actually grabbing the ball with your strings and getting a good handle. We call it a handle. I actually hear Mac talk, Pat's got a good handle on the ball. The dog has a good handle on the ball. It's like he's grabbing the ball and holding it, whether he's hitting topspin or backspin. So that was that idea. So now they joke in the academy, a lot of the kids had never picked apples before. I was stunned, you know, in my age group, we picked apples all the time. A lot of them had never done it before. So one of the kids last week were talking about doing a little journey out to the country to pick some apples for our academy day. All right, we'll open up to question and answers. Any questions?
Yeah, you were mentioning about some statistics of the dog moving and winning points from the baseline. And where did you get those statistics? Is there information on those? Is there some sort of analysis that's out there that we can look at and graph?
Yeah, sure. You have more than you can handle of that. When Craig O'Shaughnessy speaks this afternoon. Yeah, I was like you. I was a little bit like, yeah, I want to get my hands on this and study it, research it. Yeah, it'll be very helpful. Yep.
Would you say that you basically hit your volley in relation, the depth of your shot in relation to where you are? So if you're deep in the court, you hit it deep?
That's a great question. What impressed me last night the most was Taylor's first volley that he hit, that little angle put volley, was from just a little bit inside the service line. I was like, wow. You know, so you don't think of him, people that know him, it's not going to think of him as being like John McEnroe, having all this super touch. But he understood that he had to do something nice with the volley, otherwise it's going to get past. So, but yes, you know, I think Dave will talk in his talk about the DNO theory also is where you are measuring the court. But anywhere back in this area behind the service line come in, and we do a lot of work back here because as the game is getting so explosive and powerful and fast, you often don't have time. And this is very important. This ball, being able to volley and have volley from here is critical because in these returners, you just have to watch Fed play Djokovic. He serves, and what happens to that first ball? It's right here. And then Fed's doing this stuff and this stuff. So we do a lot of work. So if you're volleying and have volley from this area here, then yes, you're going for the really orange ones in the back. You've got to play from what we call from the inside out. We're trying to we want to control the center of the court, especially as a volleyer. You want to control the center of the court and go out. Last night we talked, the doubles guys, Eric and Scott talked about the Bryan brothers. I don't think of that as a weakness. He said they pitch the middle a lot. That's the strategy. You want to, in singles too, you want to pretty much, as you're coming forward, you want to be in the middle of all possible returns. So from here, we're going deep. As we get closer, we want to start getting as much angle off the court as we can. So that's a very good question. Is it difficult to hit the universal icer back here? Of course it is. It takes a lot of ability, a lot of skill. So as we get closer, then we're aiming it off. And there's nothing wrong. If I serve out toward the basket and get it off the court like Steve did with his kick serve last night a couple times, then yeah, you can volley deep. Why go for the shorter volley? And when we talk about these volleys, you may say, God, it's risky as heck, coach. Okay, but we're biting it with backspin. So if I'm down low, really reaching for a low volley, then we're not hitting it like this. This would be risky. That's risky. We're hitting it as firm as we can, as firm as we can with the backspin like that, as opposed to, it's got to have arc, because I'm below the net. But it's not this. This was the old school. Like Mac used to say, just dump it over there. Okay, that's fine. Macron does it all the time. I want to tell a little more about Macron. I forgot about that story. But as this right there has a little bit more bite, so you're gradually just getting more and more bite. That's risky, so I got to get 1 foot higher. So you're getting it over there as quick as you can without being too risky. So that's the idea. I'm down low, it's risky down here. Of course, I'm on my knee, I'm balanced. I have I can be sitting on the couch here, and you're running and reaching. So you just work with your athletes on making sure. Again, you can sit there and say, Coach, this is crazy. Hey, if you want them to win at a high level, it seems crazy at first, but they get it. negative. Okay, so back to, I was going to talk about Mac a little bit. We practice a lot of macro too, and I got to know these volleys very well because he beat up all my players with these kind of volleys. As the athletes are getting faster and stronger, Federer, about last year sometimes interviewed about his game and how's it feel to be the greatest of all time and on and on and on. And he said, you feel every shot in your game is the greatest of all time. And he said, no, Sampras certainly feels a little bit better than his. Even though stats show, I think the Fed has more aces now, he felt that Sampras, under pressure, was a better server, especially a better second server. Then they talked about volleys, and he said, nobody comes close to Magnus volleys. And I thought about that and said, well, I like Fed's volleys better because they bite the ball more. And he said that, he went on to say that Magnus volleys have continued to improve to this day because of this. He doesn't just dump it there anymore. He is biting it. He is hitting it a little bit firmer. And the idea of catching a ball, everybody ever wonders, the best volleyers of all time, how they volley, it's like Macklin. His hands out here, he catches. If you ever watch Federer when he's playing doubles and the ball's coming fast, you don't see those big, fluid, glorious swings he makes. He's out here in front. He's out here biting the ball. So we take that biting feeling, and eventually if you're back there and you want to take more of a swing volley or more back swinging through the ball, of course you do that. We're talking about the fundamental basics of understanding how to hit an advanced volley. Yeah, so any more questions? Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things in my couple of decades of doing this, whenever I talk about getting some bite on the ball, my students all seem to think, oh, you want me to slice the ball.
Okay.
So they're getting up there and they're trying this instead of that.
Yeah,
how do you make less out of this more?
Yeah, so that's where the idea of biting came in. Because I've had that same issue where I'll tell someone it's backspin and here goes their swing. So there goes the backspin.
Yep.
They're not on purpose. They're just like, coach, you can't control it. You can't pitch it. I said, no, it's okay. Let me see you catch the ball certainly. When the ball comes, catch it as certainly as you can. Got it. Not like a first baseman. I heard a coach and I heard one of my seminars coaching later saying, okay, I want you like a first baseman. Here's how a first baseman catches. That's not what I'm talking about. It's more like this, where you line it up and catch. When you catch it, really squeeze. You can hear me grab the ball. It's the same when they hit. You can squeeze, and the fingers are relaxed, and in contact squeeze. In fact, right after doing a discussion we had a roundtable discussion in Charlotte for a bunch of players 2 years ago, and Tim Wilkinson, Tim and I do some work together. He got to the quarters of the U.S. Open many years ago, and all he really has is guts and a volley. It's a little bit lefty serve, but he's guts. And we were watching him warm up his volleys, and you could see, just watch my hands. His hands would be open, and then you'd see him squeeze. His hands would be open. He wouldn't do anything else. I'd say, where are you getting all your power from? And he said, I don't know. He wasn't moving his legs. He wasn't moving his arms. It was just from that timing of squeezing and biting. So that feeling of squeezing and biting is where I get rid of that big swing and backspin.
Thank you.
Yes,
Bill?
sir.
I have two questions, please. First one would be with the backhand volley being a hand on the outside of the ball and the backhand volley. Second question, some of these kids, the other kids that you go, obviously playing two-handed backhand for the ground strokes. If you have any thoughts about if and when you should change it to a one-handed backhand volley and how that could that?
Yeah, that's a great question. For those you didn't hear, he's asking about getting outside the ball with your backhand. Everybody hear me okay? Getting outside the ball with your backhand volley, and he's got some younger girls that play with two hands, and then how do you convert them, or when, or why, or would you convert them to one-handed volley? If the concept is to get in behind a universal shot, if they're more of a baseline, then I'm okay with somebody having a two-handed volley, as long as they're outside the ball. And as far as, we see this a lot where, Rancho does one when she had a really great turn on her backhand, in her volley, when she hit her volley, it would look like this. Is this what you're talking about, and drop the inside? So we had her go ahead and get her hand up in a firm position, elbow bent, and keep it there, which is graph with her forehand grip. This is what she'd do. So just keeping the wrist up, you take the tip of the racket, pull it up, and it stays there. With her fingers relaxed, you don't hurt her arm, and in contact, just to squeeze. So go ahead, back in line. Back in line. So when you squeeze, the tip of the racket still has to be up and can't be dropped. Because that'd be when you say, yeah, Bill, that's easy for you to say. Then I'd go ahead and I'd have the left hand up there. Everybody stay on the outside. I get this feeling, again, of freezing. When you hit, just freeze. If this was strictly a basic volley demo, I would have talked about squeezing and freezing. But we have like beginners where we'll just have them squeeze and freeze, so there's no backswing, no fall through. I think it would help the others. So if it's one hand, just squeeze and freeze right in contact, just freeze it. And come on. So the other idea I have with them, this is some of the girls at Stanford that showed the turning back, and she's doing the volley, but she dropped the wrist off, was we have her think of if the ball's coming at her this way, if the ball's coming at me, everybody's coming at me, on my backhand side, then you've got my finger in front of the ball, my other finger behind the ball, finger out here is outside the ball, then I would literally have her put her wrist up If the ball's coming at me this way, then go ahead and just do this. Or if I'm in net, I'd watch out over the side. I'd have him go ahead and back this. I'd have him go ahead and just do this and make sure that it goes that way so I understand outside the ball. Don't worry about a tennis court. I do a lot of my work in the clubhouse, without lines, and that's just how we get the feel. This has been a great winter for us because we've got a lot of work on the ball. If we go inside the clubhouse, put up a little three-quarters net, we do tons of this stuff, getting outside the ball, keeping the racket up. Did I answer your question? More questions?
Bill?
Yes, sir.
Go back to the transition area again. How do you coach and train that? They come off the serve and they've got a ball right back on top of them.
Yeah, that's great.
What?
That's a great question. This is really high level tennis. This is probably won't see too much in pre-fives, but if you hit, because this is the whole thing. I did some work with Jose Harris when we got Palm Springs, but after he worked with Better for a few years, I said, what's the deal? Why is he listening to Dawson? It's just a little bit different story. But he said, because he's got these balls in this area, because the dog gets tight, his ball used to. We're used to laying around the surface, and you see plenty of shot placement videos where the golf balls are laying here, and Federer's back here, trying to hit Dawson up here, and Jose's point was he should be coming in, taking the ball on the way up, and really stab it to take away the dog's time, and just be a little more patient and wait till it could get in. We both agreed on that strategy. However, it's a lot more difficult to do it against somebody that moves like the dog. So then you say, well, why would he do that for? Well, it's something he hasn't done all his life. He's a student of the game and he keeps improving. So back here, after we serve, we have a drill where after you serve, I fire a ball right at their feet. And they've got to get back in balance within a second time. That's really short. So then they would take a half step back, lower themselves, and try to get some action on the ball. Because half volley from here is useless. All of us teaching pros do it. Balls come into you, the ball might be. All of us do it. We love go ahead a little bit harder. All the half ball. There we go. So we all love doing this, right? This is comfortable for us. It's easy. This ball right here. We all do this all day long, right? That's what we do. But what are we doing? But really, how dangerous is that ball for our opponent? It's a very comfortable ball. It's got no meat. It's got no heaviness. We all look good doing it. This is easy for us. And that's what Fed does. He serves a big serve, and he half flies it back, and then Djokovic hits a winner. I love Fed. He's my favorite player of all time, But I think that area that he's talking about is critical. You ask that question again? Oh, Lane did. Yeah, so this area is critical. So you have a choice. You serve and you jump back if you're playing Djokovic, or I'm hoping going forward we're going to find players that serve and be able to take this ball. Not half balls. So balls in here to be able to go ahead and take this ball and stab it from here, stabbing team to the open court. Make the guy hit a running passing shot. If they're as good as a dollar chain, if you whip it across court, then you got to make your shot better. And you're saying, well, coach, come on, that's okay. A few years ago, when Liam said, it's impossible to hit all these winners that guys hit from 10-50 on the baseline. The game's changing. Athletes are getting bigger, stronger. I believe, just from the geometry of the game, that's never going to change. They're not going to raise the net. They're not going to make the court bigger. So anytime you get inside, they're all trying it. Last night, Taylor was trying to most of his balls from here, that big forehand from his in here as much as possible. Backhand is a lot weaker. You can see that it's safe. But he couldn't hurt Steve, so he'd do this and run back, but he's trying to control. Steve, anytime he had a forehand inside the blue in this area, it was his point, right? He'd be ripping that inside out, ripping inside in. So you want to control the center of the court, and you want to be moving in. So I think the volley has huge importance going forward.
So that stabbed mid-court volley, you're going to immediately move forward as quickly as possible once you hit that ball.
Depending on the personality of a player. If I can get him to buy into it, then yeah. Ty, I can't get buy into it. He doesn't want to do it. We work hard with him. Have to serve on a big half step back, lower himself getting the ball. He's absorbing his opponent's power and then flinging it back, so to speak. As opposed to just, he does this a lot because he has a big serve too. He hits 130 mile an hour serve. Ball comes back fast when the two-hander just blocks it. He's often doing this stuff and this stuff. So what you're saying is a big shot. I mean, people say, how's it possible that Djokovic returns 80%, 80, 90, whatever percent it was? It's incredible the first few sets against Fed in the Australian Open. Yes, Fed wasn't playing that great. I know those arguments, but who does that? Well, where's Djokovic aiming most of his return first serves? Where's he aiming?
Right back out.
Middle here. If he's tight, it goes here. If he's a little looser, it's going here. He's not risking the business. He's not taking a hard hit ball and changing the angle. That's hard to do. A ball that has spin and power, and now you're going to say, a ball's come out spin, you're going to go ahead and hit cross court? Good luck. Good luck. They do it because they dominate the ball with their own spin. And he's smart enough to know that this is a great play. He's the shrewdest returner of all time. You know, Agassi would go out here. Agassi would miss some returns. But Djokovic is going here as hard as he can. Once he gets a handle on your serve, then okay, then he goes for the wins. Second serve, he goes for his versus. So this is big. The future of the game, everybody's looking into it and saying, okay, what are we going to do with our kids? I'm doing it with my kids. I want you guys hitting the first serve back as hard as you freaking can down the middle. So you're not going to miss right or left. If you miss long, that's an easy correction. They're going to close the rack a little bit, put more action on it. If he's trying to take his backhand up here on the first serve, he's sprinting it wide. Oh, jeez. Now we got to get him earlier on the ball. We got to make sure it's really sliding off his racket, get more spin. So that's a very important area going forward. Huge area. How am I doing on time? I need to wrap this up.
You're okay.
Oh, 15 minutes. Cool. Give me some extra time.
Steve?
Oh, you're yes.
At a lower level with kids and beginning adults, how do you correct students who persist in avoiding the backhand by doing a windshield wipe?
Jeez. I was hoping this question wouldn't come up today. I actually have a lady that I've worked with for 3 years, and she does great when I'm tossing her balls and stuff when it comes to match. All right, so the question is, how do you do when you have the windshield wipe the volley, or the volley's the forehand like this, and the, I don't know what you call it, the forehand or backhand volley? The other shot. I tried conventional, you know, I tried doing, just doing this stuff. The most luck I've had is to have her catch with her left hand. If you go this way, sorry. To have her go and just learn to catch with her left hand, and go ahead and catch with 2 hands. So then she's going around this side again, 2 hands. And then once she's caught a few, then I had her do 2 hands. She's doing this great, but she didn't match, but she still doesn't do it. So then when it comes, then I'll just tell her to go ahead and do it with 2 hands, so that she's learning to do that as opposed to that, trying to train that hand. The biggest part of it is the grip, normally. Normally they have maybe a frying pan grip, a Western grip, maybe some Western grip, so it's really hard. So the biggest key with people like that, I believe, is to get them into a combo grip. Has anybody else had that issue, had any success getting a really, really stubborn player that insists on doing this to have success, to go to this?
Use the non-dominant hand quite a bit, yeah, to help pull it back.
So that's what I've been doing, using the non-dominant hand to pull it back to people like that. And I try to get him into a reasonable grip.
I think the red position is why they do it.
So they're waiting?
They're always waiting for it.
Yeah, waiting like
And
that.
then we go back, so it's quicker to get from here.
Yeah, so that would be Lane's point, to keep the non-dominant hand and keep it neutral. Yeah. And then when their wrist is like this, when they're in this position, you just got to try to get that grip. Good question.
Steve, you had one?
One of the things I coach mid to upper level players facing that deep return that you were just talking about from the baseline is to serve and volley when that's happening and they're getting stung right there, instead of trying to retreat, but to go ahead and serve and volley, at least for a short period of time, to shorten the return. So as the player's coming in, as the returner kind of catches on that's the tactic coming in, they kind of try to shorten the return, they hit it at the server's feet. Do you think that's a good?
Yeah. I mean, now that I realize we have more time, I'll go ahead and talk more about that. So, okay, well, let's stay with this one. So, if you're playing somebody on a Djokovic, they can hit the ball this deep and firm all the time, and you're under constant barrage of backing up. First of all, let's get it clear that our training should be hit, a quick half step back, just a half, because you don't have much more time, so it really will look like this. Hit, and then if it's coming your backhand left, it's semi-open, lower yourself, and then send the ball deep and heavy out. Forehand side, serve, big step back with the right foot, lower yourself. It's all you have time for when it's coming that fast. So that's that. Now, how do you make them hit shorter so you're just tired of that? You don't have that step, then you can serve a volley. So you're going to be digging out balls around here, but hopefully you're at least getting it in their head that you're coming forward, and you want them now to lower their return or shorten their return so that you have an even tougher volley. Now that you've got the hitting shorter, now you serve and stay back. So a great example of this would be Pete Sampras. He was very good at doing that. He would serve, hit monster forehands. If a guy Agassi's getting on top of his return and making him back up, then he would serve and volley. So Sampras was really a genius that way. He was mixing the serve and volley very well, using that strategy to get the shorter balls. So that's a very good strategy. So you have a player that you think has a good mentality for serve and volley. If they're a match player and they hate losing, They hate getting beat at the net, so let's put it that way. They hate getting past the net because it wasn't them in control. If somebody passes you, your thought is, wow, they won me. If you hit a big point and you miss it, it'll go up and hit it my way. Some kids have that personality. So with Brzezinski, what we did was really successful, and this also for me, Emilio Sanchez. He, at the time, he was not one of the world doubles, but his singles, who could complain? He was top 20 in the world for 10 years. But he was over just outside the top 10 and he wanted to add more fight to his game. So made me think about this play because he was the one that made me think he would do this. He would survive. So he said that what helped him a lot in matches to get over the hump of serving volley was he would pick a point in a match, and I did this with Brzezinski to big success. Because Greg, when he was younger, did not like to serve volley either. He hated people having control over him. He hated coming in. You take a point in the match, preferably early in the match, and you serve a volley. You pick the point. It could be love 40, 40 love, 30 love, you decide. Depending on the personality, you may want to do it when you're up 40 love, you may want to do it on first game point, you're still down there, you can't do anything else. And if you win the point, you do it again. Win the point, you do it again. Right? You never change the winning game in tennis if you're a match play, but win again, you do it again. As soon as you lose the point, your player has the option. They can stay back. So now it becomes, their mind is more occupied in doing something successful. I'm going to keep doing something. If I listen, okay, now I'm going to stay back. If I did forehand, later in the match, I'll do it again. Mila told me one story when he played Thomas Muster from Austria. And he was playing him in Sydney, and we were in the locker room together, we were talking, and he was very busy. I'm playing Muster here. I'm not used to seeing you this lose. He goes, I've never lost to him. He said, once I learned to serve and volley against Muster well, he said, all he does when his spins. And immediately you all saw Thomas Muster play. He ripped the ball with heavy spin. Like Nadal, just a younger or older version of Nadal who didn't have quite the same RPMs on the ball, but the same style of play. And I went out and watched him play, and sure enough, they'd get these long rallies, play for point space, and also he was serving volley, serve volley. He won 12 straight points on his serve and volley. He won 12. He won 3 games of love, serving and volley against Muster, who had pretty good returns. And so you can get some momentum. It's a good momentum game changer if you can serve and volley. But if not, if you end up losing the point, you can stay back. And then next, you talk to your player for the next match. He plays and says, okay, why don't we try it this time during the match or this time? And eventually they can learn to trust themselves under pressure because you're putting the control in their hands. They don't have to keep serving the volley. They can do it when they want. But that was a really good game-changing technique to change a game habit. Those of us that have coached a lot of competition players, we realize that we can do, 100 hours of good quality work, like teaching the lady that does this. Take 100 hours with her. I can have her hit volleys like this in private lessons, but like this, and you'd say, wow, look at that volley. And then 1 hour playing a match with her peers, Queen City Tennis, and she gets nervous and does 1 or 2 like this, you've just lost 100 hours. Things learned under pressure, at least I believe, stick 10, 20, 100 times more than things without pressure. If you can get a player to do something under pressure and have just a little bit of success, it ends up sticking. So that's why, if I was Taylor's coach, I really like that kid. I think he's got a great game, very humble afterwards, and a lot of people talking. I heard him say that he really didn't believe in himself that much until that 9th game. Steve was serving it 4-all and played a really loose game. Those of us watching think it was loose, but some of us think maybe he got nervous or tight at that point. But they practiced a lot together, and I think Steve does a number on him most of the time. So I think he's a good kid. I like to get him and encourage him, maybe do a little bit more of this kind of play and finish points. Did you all notice how physical the match was last night? How physically, like, oh my God, these guys are really beating their bodies up. Right, left, right, left. If Craig had seen it, I'm sure a lot of us would say, Craig, your statistics show that the average length of the point is, 3, 4 shots on the Pro Tour? Last night we saw a lot of 10, 12 ball rallies, just full out sprinting side to side, stopping, diving, sliding. So the game's physical. You want to hit the points as quickly as possible so that you have energy left for the next match. Not just physical energy, but emotional and mental energy too. More questions?
Working with, say, 9 or 10 to 14-year-old kids, I have, any suggestions? I mean, all of the little things, they gotta get familiar with the volleys and going forward. But any suggestions or any exercises that would you recommend so that they don't hit a break wall when they hit the service line? They're so scared to come in over there because they get blocked all the time.
Yeah,
you just tell them 1,000 times during drills and lessons, and they still go to the tournaments and they stop at 30 times and get in trouble?
Yeah, this is a good question. So we're talking about pros that love their overheads, coming in, get up here and hit with volleys. And what about the 10-year-old kid that maybe is about that tall? So I like teaching young kids volleys because they learn what I consider real volley skill. The volley from back here with what they call no grip takes skill. You know, it's not easy. The volley from up here, which a lot of coaches I know when you do it, I have a really uncoordinated kid that just is having no success at all. They want me to go home with a smile on their face. I'll put them up here like this and go ahead and do the ball. Let them do this. I'll do this. And they smile and say, "God, coach, hey, this is great. I'm having success." I'll do it. We all do it, right? We want the kid to be happy. However, this is not realistic, right? I mean, it's fun. Like I showed earlier, you can upside down, you can do whatever you want. You can get loud. So what I like to do with the kids at all levels is tell them the ideal volley position is halfway between the net and the service line. This is ideal, right? If you're Roger Federer, if you're a pro, whatever. If you love your overhead, like Pete Sampras did, take one step forward. Greg Brzezinski loved his overhead, one step forward. If you're over 6 feet tall and you like jumping area, look another step forward. Bryan Brothers, Leander Pace, this is probably their ideal volley position. You know, most of us call this the offensive volley position. So ideal volley position is halfway. If you're under 6 feet tall and you don't really jump well, one step back. If you haven't yet learned the continental grip and how to volley, if you don't have a quickness yet, like the younger kids do, another step back. So I actually teach most of the kids that age to volley from here once they have had some success. If they're really frustrated, let them step into it. So back here, continental grip, and I teach them the overhead right away, right off the bat. And I tell them that anytime a ball goes up, their hands attached to their feet, it goes up and the foot goes back right away. Yes, at a high level, you're supposed to have a good jab step. But at that level, all I want to go ahead and throw up, I want both hands up and the foot back right away. So their first reaction is not going to be like this. None of this stuff. It's part of the game. Just like they never let the ball bounce twice. If the ball goes up, their hands are going up, their feet are going up. Can you go ahead and really deep? Don't feel like you can't get it. So your hands go, feet go, they go. Okay, couldn't get that. And you say, okay, let's take bigger steps. The biggest thing we got to watch for is they don't run like this, right? So they don't catch a heel and crack their head. So I have them turn sideways. The next time, go ahead and move back and isolate just the wrist. So hands go up. Go ahead and give me some really tough ones. Give me some tough ones. So if they don't get it, this is what happens in 10. You go, great, Johnny. Great effort. You were there. 2 more years, when you're another foot taller, jump higher again. Say, okay, great, Johnny, you got back, you got it, you were almost there, and then maybe feel mature a lot. But at least get them so they respond. How many kids we have that don't even know what to do, and just look at it go. So I'm just arming them with the skill to back up, and I like to teach back here a lot. Teach them this area, or learning to press forward their volley. Wait a minute. Today's talk is the volley side. So many things that we can continue to talk about. For some reason I thought I had less time. For me, the volley starts anywhere in no man's land forward. So I want to teach my kids, everybody, to volley from all over the court with a conventional biting the ball volley. Back here, it's not as much catching in front as it is. We got to have a little bit more forward motion. I tend not to say take a backswing. I tend to say take a follow. So we're back here, and they hit it. I let them go ahead and squeeze and press forward. From up here, then it's just squeeze and freeze. So then they freeze. Then further back here. Then now, way back here, they'll have a little more backswing, but I won't talk about it. I don't want them to think back here. I want them to think here and squeeze and press forward. So if you're really moving forward on the ball, you're squeezing and pressing forward, there's going to be more movement. There has to be. And then half volleys are critical. So that's all part of the game. Half volleys. If you're still taking up off the racket and just swinging forward, you have to come in the grip because you're coming out. That's going to be good. How about just going forward, keeping the racket parallel to the net as long as you can. There shouldn't be any circular motion. Right, if you want to go from the middle out, from the middle of the court out to the corner, there's a slight deviation in angle, but you're not trying to put heavy spin. This is one of the times where you're not trying to bite the ball with yours, but this is the one time in tennis where I still haven't figured out how to teach biting the ball. So if anybody has any tips for me, I'd love to learn them. Because right now all I'll do is teach them half volley from the middle out to the sides, and then teaching them overhead right away, teaching them position, footwork. You don't just teach them ball, you got to cover all of that.
What would you tell 3-5 and 4 level female lead players about the swinging volley when you use it?
Well, I'd say anytime that there's a lobby type ball lob, that they want to go ahead and take advantage of it. If they're skilled enough, because you're sending a message to their team. as opposed to giving them a lot of ball, as opposed to, this is what most of them will do, they'll kind of just poke at it and come running in. If they have a decent point, they're able to go ahead and do this kind of motion here and spin the ball. And I know how to do it. So you're talking about the top spin. Yeah, because you're sitting confident. You know, these jump confident. As a teacher, if they can do it, I encourage them to do it. Again, that's changed. You know, 10 years ago, I would have been all about just this. If these ladies are watching tennis on TV and say, well, they're good, why can't I do it? Well, they play a lot more than you. If you can do it, let's do it. You know, if you can do it, let's do it. I'm sorry, I missed the first part.
If you're teaching a decent high school player that has a pretty nice ball, that motion coming forward, they're coming a little bit too hard with it and laying that back. How do you teach them to kind of get that ball into the script they might know the script that you got to shake?
Yeah.
When I can't get there, kind of lay it back and it's still a little bit too much power.
Yeah, that's a good question. I tried to answer the question a little bit in the beginning when I talked about outside the ball, but we do have players that have been taught to lay their wrist back and kind of come like this. Is this what you're talking about? Yeah, so this is a pretty common volley. We all taught, probably most of us taught this way years ago. The problem with this volley is you can't handle a heavy ball with spin unless your timing is just incredible. If he's down over there again, so if I'm coming there, he's whipping, and I'm thinking covering that line, he's whipping a heavy topspin cross passing shot, and my first reaction is like, watch out over here. And I lay my wrist back, so I lay my wrist back like that, then I'm distracted, but the ball's going to slide off. You guys get the idea, right? So I explain why that's no good, that you have to be outside the ball, and I make them, if you hit a soft one like that, I hit cross court and make them catch the ball on the outside like this. And then I take the racket and I do a volley on the outside. You say, yeah, coach, we want to hit it there. Well, hang in there. So we do this. And then the next one, now I say, okay, wait. The next one, we stay outside the ball, but direct it that way. And this is one of the hardest things I have with smart players. They say, well, coach, if I'm outside the ball, it's always going to go cross court. Not if you get outside the ball and shove forward. So watch the spin I have in this ball. So I'm going to be outside the ball, but I'm shoving forward. It had outside the ball spin, but I shoved it that direction. So I had a good bite in the ball, I had a good hold. And I would explain to the kid, you can never do that with the wrist like that. You got to get outside. I haven't had a ton of short angle volleys. Just because the reason I like short angle so much is you can't swing and do that. So teaching somebody short angle volleys at the beginning of their career when they're 5 years old or 3.5 later, you teach them short angle and they automatically learn to do this concept. This concept of being outside the ball. Now doing my racket, I got to hit the blue target, so I'm going to be outside the ball. When I finish, look at my racket, it's pointing outside. This is the position we want. When you watch Federer, Mac diving for volleys, you see their hand like this. You don't see it like this. They're always like this. They got to get outside the ball, otherwise it's going to spray off. You know, when I talk about the modern forehand, big forehands, if you ever stood right behind Nadal when he's hitting his forehand, Djokovic, Agassi is the one I learned it from. They're always outside the ball. Well, I warmed up one time with Agassi, and we're warming up any tennis, and every ball he hit, his forehand would curve to my body, his backhand would curve to my body. Finally, I caught the ball and said, Andrew, what are you doing? You playing with me? He said, what are you talking about? I said, every ball you're outside, you're a short angle. He goes, what? That's how I hit the ball. And Greg was saying, he couldn't get himself taped up and started laughing. And because the way Andrew said it, he said it to me very cocky. He said, oh, that's what I hit. He said, you have to fly away. And then Greg laughed, and we said, well, why? And then he explained, what I just explained to you. He said, you think when I'm returning your Greg's serve at 150 miles an hour, he serves that lefty serve out wide of me. If I'm not outside the ball, where's his serve going to go? Actually, I understood completely. So outside the ball. That's how if you stand behind the ball and watch him hit it, even his inside out left beforehand, it's always curving back to the middle. It's always outside the ball. That's why you very rarely will see somebody like Nadal or Agassi spray a ball off to the side. They're always getting outside the ball. You have to. Today's game, the ball is so fast and heavy, it's floating off the court. Last night, Steve Johnson's known for his big forehand. He's just big. I was surprised last night that when we really got into the match, it seemed like Taylor had a bigger forehand. And that's not typical. Normally, Steve sets it up that low slides, moves around, and freezes you in the corner, hits inside out, big forehand. Well, last night, you could see them banging forehands back and forth. And you kept seeing this action here where Taylor's on the outside of the ball getting a better angle or Steve getting a better angle. That's them. They very rarely will try to go run. When they do, believe me, they're outside the ball. Otherwise, it's going to spray off. Players wondering, wow, I often see my 4 or 5 club players banging balls when they hit hard, they're spraying off to the sides. That's because they don't understand that concept. Well, that concept's at every level. And to bring it back to the volley, when I first teach tennis to little kids, I like teaching how to volley first. I'll have them catch some balls and I'll just have them do the little short